Hi, I'm Aiman, and welcome back to one of my auto repair videos. And I know it's been a long time since I've done one of these, and I can't even remember the last time I've done, but in order to just get to the point, in this video I'm going to show you how I replaced my brother's 2006 Hyundai Santa Fe front brake pads. That was a mouthful. Now the reason that we're doing this is because this is my brother's car actually, and my dad actually borrowed the car to, I think, haul some bricks over. But while he was driving the car, he heard some weird grinding noise, and he figured that it was probably the brake pads, probably. So today we're going to replace them because we don't want it to get worse, because if it gets worse, this disc right here, which is called the rotor, if it gets too worse, we're gonna have to end up replacing that. And we actually replaced the brake pads in the rear just a year ago. As for the front brake pads, we haven't replaced them since we bought the car 3 or 4 years ago, so it's probably time for a change anyway. Alright, so just a side note, let me remind you of the back front pads, the back brake pads that we had to replace from my brother's car. We not only replaced the brake pad, but we also replaced the disc. You can see that it looks a bit different. And the reason why is because the brake pad problem got so bad on the back that, and my brother didn't know about it until he told my dad, that we actually had to replace the rotor because it got so bad. So instead of costing like $30, it costed around $100, maybe $150. And this is just a mental note to make, to always make sure to check your brakes if you hear a weird grinding noise or just hear any noise with your car. Because, for example, my Uncle Yus has had over 10 cars, some have gone over 200,000 miles. And he's never had to replace the rotor. He's only replaced the brake pads, and there's been no problems with the rotors. Alright, so now first step is I'm gonna jack the car up. I'm not really used to this, of course, because my dad always helps me find the pinch point for jacking up this car, but hopefully I should be able to find it. Alright, I think right at that bolt is a good area to do it. And then, let me just adjust this. I think we'll probably put the jack stand right here. Let me just make sure this is not scratching anything. Okay. Alright, so just a side note, before you start jacking the car up, if you don't have an impact driver like we do, make sure to loosen the bolts before you jack the car up, because if you try to loosen them while the wheel is in the air, it's going to start spinning, and you don't want that to happen. So the impact driver, because it's so fast and powerful, actually it doesn't matter if it starts spinning. Alright, make sure that the tire's off the ground before you put the jack stand, of course. Alright, so I'm told that you need it at least 2 or 3 inches off the ground so that you can actually take the tire off, so that it doesn't rub against the ground while taking it out. Alright, so usually people just have the jack in place. They don't need to have the jack stand, but for sake of caution, and because I'm just a kid, we just want to err on the side of caution and just put a jack stand. And this is a hydraulic jack, so it could fail, so there's always that chance, so just in case. So now we can get to the wheel. And we're going to use one of my favorite tools, the impact driver, although it's very loud. Let me see. Okay, we're gonna reset it to its normal position. So now we're gonna put the right socket on. So I forgot what socket number goes on it. It's not a 17. And I don't think 19 is fitting. Wait, hold on. So it's not 19, I hope. This is, wait, oh, so it's not 18. Let's see, 19. It's not 19. Hopefully this is just sped up. 21. And it looks like 21 is a good fit, so I'm going to put that on. righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And we want to loosen it in a star pattern, so we're just going to start from the top left. Yeah, it doesn't matter where you put these, as long as you don't lose them. Go down to the bottom or to the bottom right. Back to the left. This makes taking off tires very easy. Finally, bottom. So this is always probably one of my most clumsiest parts, but taking off the tire. Now, I can never get the right grasp on this, so oh, okay. So not that bad. Just gonna lay that down. And now we can get to the heart of the problem, the brake pads. So, I forgot how to do these, but I've done it before, so it should be muscle memory. But looking at the brake pads themselves, so let's test if my dad's prognosis about the brake pads is correct without taking off the brake pads first. Because first we want to make sure that the problem is what we're actually addressing and not something else entirely. So, just looking at the brake pads themselves, this is about half an inch thick, and looking at the car brake pads, it looks like it's whittled down so much, and okay, you can see it, or it's about maybe a 1/16, maybe an 1/8 of an inch. So you can tell that this is definitely in dire need of replacing. Looking at the rotor itself, it looks like there's been a bit of whittling down on the top here, but the bottom here has been a bit smooth. So it looks like we don't all in all have to replace the rotor itself. However, when we replace the brake pads, there might be a bit of grinding, but as it gets smoother, that grinding should go away. So I guess now we're going to replace the brake pads. Alright, so the next step in this process is to remove two bolts. This top one right here, they're called caliper bolts. This top one right here, and there's one down here. Now don't confuse it with this one that's behind this hose right here. Don't take that one off. But when you take off these two, this whole thing should just swing down, and you'll see what happens. But right now, since it looks rusty, we're going to use PB Blaster to just loosen that up there. We don't want it to strip when we take it off. Oops. Okay. Even if it's too much, it's good enough. And what we're going to do is, because we don't want to break the Milwaukee, it looks like we're just going to apply some force using a regular wrench. And let me just make sure this is the right size. Alright, so it looks like a 14 socket is the right one. You just put this on this angled wrench. And righty tighty, lefty loosey. Okay, yeah. Now we're just going to loosen it. So this top one should come off a bit very easy, and then this bottom one should be a bit harder, but it's the other way, right? Yeah. Righty tighty, lefty. Yeah, it should be this way. Okay. I almost thought for a second there that I was going the wrong direction and it was gonna break, but thankfully, no. Okay, that makes me happy. Okay, so we'll just use the Milwaukee for this loosening, because I want to showcase off this awesomeness of this Milwaukee. This is my tool. This is not Azami's tool. Azami's more of an electric guy, but this is good for me. So this is going right now, so I have to go the other way. You can see that. You can see that as I'm taking it off. You can see that this, I don't know what it's called. Maybe a gasket. But this rubber part right here actually moves a bit. So this rubber thing right here is called the caliper guide pin. So I think it helps guide it in. But this bottom bolt right here, we're not gonna take it out. I'm not sure if I said that yet, but we're not gonna take it out. We're only gonna loosen it. So I'm gonna use the angled wrench. Alright. Now let's. Feels like this is smaller. Oh, this is a 17. I'm using the wrong wrench. There we go. I couldn't find a good place to get my arms into angle, and I'm also not very strong, so that was a bit hard. So we just loosened it, and I can already just unscrew it by hand, so I don't need the Milwaukee, but we're not going to take it off yet. Alright, so now that we have the bottom bolt loosened, we're going to try to swing this down. By the way, this assembly is called, this is the caliper right here, this thing, and this is called the caliper bracket. So just a bit of terminology, just so you can get familiar with it, and if I ever use it to identify the parts, then you should know. So we're going to take a pry bar and just wedge it in between. Now, you can already see there's a bit of give here. So when I push, it should just... Alright, so it turns out that my dad is wrong. Apparently, it's not going to swing down. And this is because, first off, it doesn't have a hinge on the bottom. But also, because unlike some other cars that me and my dad have worked on in the past, like the Hondas, this has two pistons, one up here and one at the very bottom, that it seems like it's not just going to swing out. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually take out both of the bolts. Hold on. And then we're just going to just pry it out entirely. And then we're going to sit it on top. Oof. Oh, that looks very fragile. Okay, here we go. Alright, so if you're a beginner to this like I am, and you might not know where the brake pads go on, you can always do it one at a time, or you can just look for features that might distinguish them. For example, you can tell that this new one, is the front brake pad because both of them have this piece sticking out. And this one is the rear one because it doesn't have that. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take out these brake pads. So first we're going to do it with my hand to see just how tough it is. Okay, so by hand it wasn't that bad even though it's rusted. Might have to pry it out from the bottom too. You make sure you don't want to hurt the rotor. Don't want to damage it too much. Okay, let me see if we can just lift this. It might just be a bit rusted. Hey, there we go. Oh, it's stuck to the this little piece down there. And I'll talk about that piece just in a minute. Let's try this back one. This is not one by one, actually. Alright, so you need to get a better camera angle. Just sticking that right there. Whoa, okay. That came out faster than I expected. Just for sake of comparison. Okay. Just for sake of comparison, look how thick the new one is compared to the old one. Dang. That's already halfway through. Alright, so now looking at the outside pads, you can see two main things. First off, you can tell that on the new part that there's a wear indicator. So this wear indicator is supposed to indicate, you can tell from the title, when you're supposed to replace this pad. So when you get to the bottom of this wear indicator, you know when to replace it. You can see on this one, which is from, I think, Advanced Auto Parts, it doesn't really have one because the this little ridge down here goes all the way to the bottom. So you can tell it's not a wear indicator. The next thing that we can tell is that from feeling this, probably you can't tell, but from feeling this, I can tell that this is probably what's causing that grinding noise because it's such a rough surface. Alright, so now we're going to replace this little shim or this bracket here that holds the brake pads in. And usually you don't have to. I know some people who don't, like my uncle Yus, who didn't replace it because it wasn't genuine. And my argument is that first off, he's already buying a aftermarket part, so of course, why don't you just replace the bracket too? And second of all, he bought used cars only. So how does he know that the parts already on the car aren't aftermarket too? How does he know that the owners haven't replaced them? Anyway, we're just going to take these off, and let's see if there's any. Okay. Let's look at this. Looks like you just slide it off, and that'd be right. I'm gonna pry it off because it looks like it's a bit rusty. There we go. So this is a comparison of the two, and look, they don't even look different at all. I mean, let me just put this on top of the other one. Look, not even any difference. Yeah, good. So now we're going to take out the bottom one. It looks like you just tie it off as well. There we go. So now we're going to put both of them on, and I think that there's actually no difference. So even if we use that part, there shouldn't be any distinguishing factor. So we put this, make sure that this wide piece that connects these two is on the outside, and we're just going to put it on. And let me see. Oh, make sure that this little part that sticks out goes over this ridge. No, this little piece. I'm not gonna explaining that part, but just make sure that this little elbow goes on top of this piece. And it's a friction fit, so I don't think there's anything that needs to be bolted down. Of course. Just on the top too. And I think we're good. Next step is we're going to slide this on. We're going to fit it on, and some people will put grease on them because they know that these are brake pads and they're meant to move so that they can compress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this grease and I'm going to just apply a bit onto the top and bottom, right here and right here. And it's going to be a bit hard to find the grease in here, but just a little bit and a little bit here. Okay, so I think a lot of grease in this packet's already been used up, so it's a bit hard to measure how much. But just make sure that this is the outside piece, because I have the little piece sticking out. We're going to stick it on the bottom first. Okay, and then we're going to slide it in. Okay. There we go. Whew. Now we're just going to repeat on the other side, which doesn't have a notch. So we just make sure the orientation's right. We're going to put some grease on it. I'm going to be a bit more lenient with how much grease I put. Usually people don't put grease, so it's alright if you don't have any. Just apply that. Spread that on. And we're just going to stick it on. So like I said, bottom and then top. Although I don't think it's going to matter as much because it doesn't have this bracket blocking it. Done. Alright, there we go. Alright, so the inside brake pad is on. The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to actually make these pistons compress again. And the reason why, you might be asking, is because with the old pistons, with the old brake pads, they're actually thinner. So as they got more thinner, the pistons expanded further. So when we put these thicker pistons, these thicker brake pads on, these are going to have to the spaces have to gonna expand in order to accommodate that, if that makes sense. So when we do this, we're going to take our old brake pad, the one without the notch, and take the old brake pad without the notch, and you can tell that it's the one with the 2 rings on it. And what you're going to do is you're going to line it up against it. We'll come back to this in a second, but first off, we're going to take a look under the hood, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove the brake fluid cap, so that, because when we compress this, the brake fluid might actually overflow, and in order to relieve any pressure that might build up, we're going to take off the cap. So now that we have the brake pad in place, what we're going to do is make sure it's centered. Now, let me just tell you, on other cars that might have only one piston, it's way easier to do this because you can just take the brake pad and center it on that piston. But because there's 2 of them, what we're going to do is we're going to take our clamp, and we're going to do one side, tighten it a bit, then the other side, tighten it a bit, and then we're going to go on the other side and repeat. And they have special tools for this. I forgot what they're called. I think they're called brake pad wrenches or something. But what they're supposed to do is they're a ratcheting wrench that, as it expands, as you rotate it, it's supposed to expand, and that pushes the brake pad in, and that causes the piston to compress. So for now, we're just going to do it with the tools that we have, like we always do, and we're going to try it. So just gotta make sure this is centered, right? So just a tiny bit. Make sure that's centered. Okay, that's a tiny bit. Patience is key. Okay, loosen that up, switch it back, and this is gonna be sped up, right? Okay. I'm actually just loosening it every time I pull it back. Alright, now we have the final result, and you can see that it almost looks flush with the rubber. And just make sure that you don't tighten it too much, lest that the rubber actually breaks and you have to replace the entire part. Beside that, I mean, it probably shouldn't break, but you know, just err on the side of caution. Anyway, I'm gonna take this entire part, and we're just gonna slide it back on. And let me see if there's any special notches that I have to be aware of. I don't think so. And now we're just going to try to fit it on. If it doesn't fit, that means you have to put the pistons back in further. But for us, you can see that it fits. So just going to, and when you put this on, you can see that this might block you, so you just need to push that in a bit. And on the bottom, it might do the same thing. So just be patient with it, and then push it in. Bottom down. Alright, so we pushed the piston all the way in, and we already had both of the brake pads on, but when we tried putting the caliper in, it didn't fit. So we spent, I think, a good 10 minutes trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and we finally thought to compare the two brake pads. And we said earlier that they looked identical, but they're actually not, because if you look very closely, you can see two notches right here, these two bumps, and it's the same thing on the outside, two bumps. And I'm not sure why they would have this, but because of these two bumps, it's not letting the caliper go in. So I guess what we're gonna have to do is return these to AutoZone and probably get a new part from Advanced Auto Parts, but whatever it is, we'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, Aurelia. My dad went to AutoZone, and apparently there's 3 ranks of brake pads. There's regular, then there's gold, which is the one that we had, and then there's platinum. The one that we had, gold, is the only one that has those notches. So my dad decided, why not? And then he just decided to upgrade to premium. First off, because he didn't want to have to replace these brake pads for another 4 years, and it was just easier. So now that we have our platinum brake pads, which I wonder what the difference is, but apparently they're better quality. Now that we're just going to install it, and we should be good, hopefully. So now we need our grease. We're going to put the inside on first. Alright, so just talking about how my dad actually got it. So the price for the regular is $25, the gold is $35, and then the platinum is $45. So originally my dad had a coupon for $7 off, but then the manager at AutoZone was nice and decided to give us, I think, 20% off, which was, since this was $45, that would be $9 off. So the manager was really nice. Good customer service, I guess. And now that we have those brackets on, hold on, feels like, and I have to realign them. What the? Okay, there we go. Now that we have the brackets in, that was tricky. Hopefully we sped that up. We're just going to put that on, bottom first, then top. And from there, it's just a straight shoot. And really, I'm just hoping right now that we're not going to have another problem that requires us to buy a different part. Now we're going to try the outside, and hopefully that should be a bit easier. This time it's bottom, so for the top, we put on the bottom, and then top. That was easier, definitely because we could see what we need to push in. Alright, now for the moment of truth. Okay, this is what we've waited our entire lives for. Let's see. Oh, gotta push the bottom parts in. Hey, there we go. Oh, that is a happy day. Happy day. Oh, okay. So I'm guessing now all you have to do is put the bolts back on. Alright. Alright, so now we're going to tighten these bolts to the right spec now that we've tightened them by hand. Where's my Milwaukee? There it is. And, I mean, it has a rubber guide pin right here, so hopefully it shouldn't be too tight, but it shouldn't be too loose. And hopefully that rubber should accommodate us. Okay, so once the Milwaukee stops spinning, that's my cue to stop. And there we go. Looks pretty secure to me. Alright, so now let's take a look at the brake pads just for comparison. You can see there's totally no major difference at all. I mean, if we're gonna go by the same process that I did while noticing just like a little tiny stitch, maybe just a little hole, maybe that would be a difference. But actually, to be honest, there's no difference. I'm not exaggerating. There actually is no difference except for those holes. But you can even see on this one. I mean, this is for the other side, so the notch is on the opposite side. But wow. So I guess it really is premium quality. That's funny. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to put the tire back on. We don't have to show you that. We're going to put the brake fluid cap back on. And just a note, after you put everything back on, make sure that before you even drive, just make sure to pump the brake a few times, like, you know, press down on the pedal, just to make sure that the brake fluid goes through. Because what happened was when Uncle Yus fixed Uncle Zolly's car, the first thing he tried to do was he tried to reverse. And even though Uncle Yus told him to pump the brakes for a few times, Uncle Zolly forgot to, and he ended up just not stopping. Fortunately, there was a building behind Uncle Zolly, but if there wasn't, I don't know what could have happened. So just make sure that you pump the brakes a few times after you install the brake pads. The reason that I mention pumping the brakes is because some people might ask whether or not they have to pump to bleed the system. And we don't actually, because we didn't interfere at all by opening up the hydraulics. So all we have to do is just to pump the brakes. We didn't open up anything, so nothing's going to be leaked. So when we look up here at the brake fluid, you can actually see that it rises a bit, which is, it's a good thing that we took off the cap so that any pressure that would build up doesn't build up, and there would be any, actually never mind, I don't have to worry about air bubbles. So now we're just going to put the tire back on, and remember, after everything's done, make sure you torque everything to the right amount, make sure this is tightened to the right specs, use a torque wrench for your tire, and I guess that's it. Alright, so now we're going to close this video off, but before we do that, I just want to notice that there's 4 cars right here that have been in my videos that we've all worked on. First off is my 2003 Honda Accord, and I've done a ton of dismantling videos on that, so go check that out if you want to. Of course, there's this Hyundai, I think it's a 2006. On my left here is a Prius, I think that's 2009 Toyota Prius. And we've done a few videos on that, and it was running fine for a while until it had a multiple cylinder misfire. So my dad thinks it's the engine, so we're going to start doing videos on that once we have a new engine. And of course there's my dad's 2010 Honda Civic, which many videos on. So go check the videos out on them if you have the time, and I guess that's it. So I'm Aiman, and thanks for watching. Please like, rate, comment, subscribe, and other videos on Aiman, especially the auto repair videos, the car dismantling videos, you know, car repair videos, and I'll see you there. So signing out. And you might want to notice my cat there. I really am. Alright, so signing out. Peace.